Live. We're live. David,
Fantastic.
welcome. You come from the faraway lands of Trunk.
Thank you.
How's Trunk going?
Trunk's doing phenomenally.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the stream. We're excited to have you here and talk about your Merge Queue product. Maybe we can talk about some of your other stuff too. Trunk in general looks pretty cool.
Thank
Just
you.
as a disclaimer to everyone, we did do a dry run of this yesterday, so this is a little rehearsed.
We did half a dry run. We're gonna do more
Okay.
today.
There's
We're gonna do
more.
But
Nice.
wait, there's more.
Awesome. Well, let's give folks a little bit to kind of trickle in, and then we'll start things proper. But yeah, you mentioned you're in San Francisco, David.
I am. Yes.
How is that over there aside from early?
San Francisco is pretty much the same as it's always been, although everyone likes to ask about it.
Do you like San Francisco?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a very scenic city, and it's always room temperature. Always. I mean, the spread of temperatures here is from like 50 degrees to 75 degrees, and that's it. That's all it ever gets.
That does sound kind of nice, to be honest.
we have at Trunk about half of our folks, maybe a bit more, 2/3 in the Bay Area, and the rest around the country and Canada now.
Very cool. We're spread out actually about I don't know. I'd have to like check we have like a map somewhere of all of our stuff, of all of our folks, that is, and where they're at. But I think we're like 1/3 US, 1/3 Canada, and then like 1/3 in Europe. So
that's a big time zone split with Europe.
Yeah, it's usually all right. They seem to just be there super early. is what I can tell.
They all just shift their times.
A little bit, I think. I like to think we do pretty good about like being accommodating to everyone. But yeah, it was definitely a lot harder when we were consultants. So before we kind of switched to focusing NX as a product, we were a consultancy that we were building NX while being a consultancy for larger enterprise companies who all needed some sort of mono repo solution. So that's kind of the origins of us. And then
I didn't know that of NX.
Yeah. It's a kind of a cool, I think it's a cool story about how like we were building a solution that just matched what the needs we saw were out there, and then had the opportunity to take that and focus on building that out. So it's kind of an interesting, I think that's a more interesting genesis to a company. I feel like most people start with the idea or the solution and then go from there. I don't know. How early did you start with Trunk?
So we've been doing it for about 3 years, and what we're doing is building a software delivery toolkit. Prior to forming Trunk, myself and my co-founders were all working on Uber's self-driving car project, which was called Uber ATG. And basically, we're building the thing that we wish we could have bought at Uber.
Awesome.
So we did start with a pretty strong idea, and we've basically been building it out. Uber had a lot of problems, especially on that project. They scaled it really big, really fast, and we're spending something like $500 million a year on 650 engineers, software engineers, and then hundreds of hardware and other people. And it just it didn't work. You can't throw that many people on a project, mostly working out of a monorepo without a lot of good tools. And we tried to do a lot of things the way that Google develops code, but without the tooling that Google has built over the decades with hundreds of people. And it was very painful. So we started building stuff or looking for stuff to buy, which we didn't find, and then building stuff. And then myself and my co-founders said, shouldn't there just be a thing to buy for this? And started Trunk.
That's awesome. That's very cool. Yeah, that's super interesting. So it's interesting you were working on the self-driving car stuff at Uber, just because I don't know. I always thought that was the future. Like,
It still is. It's still coming.
well, they just needed the monorepo tools, and it'd be there.
But this is crazy. But myself and the rest of it, I led about 40 engineers on that project. But myself and the rest of engineering leadership were all convinced that our workflow problems were the biggest problem holding the project back, not
Really?
solving the unsolved problem that is making a car drive better
Yeah.
via self-driving. And that's a crazy and stupid statement to make, but that was the reality we were facing.
That's actually a crazy that may be the most interesting thing that gets said all podcast, honestly. Or all whatever this is, all live stream. So,
Mhm.
that's very interesting, though. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Like, if you think about it, like, just the collaboration of that many engineers. You said you had 40 working under you. How
Yeah,
do you know how many were working on all of the like, just
650.
okay. Wow. How many
Yeah, there
commits
weren't
daily?
we had about 150 to 200 commits a day in the
Okay.
monorepo. The entire org wasn't working in the monorepo, but maybe 3/4 of it was.
Mhm. That's fairly intense. Um,
It is. We're talking about a merge queue today. Internally in Uber, we built a merge queue. Actually,
mhm.
within all of Uber, we had at the time 3 competing merge queues that each took multiple people and many months to build.
Yeah.
But the one that Uber ATG used was a very simple merge queue, which we'll get into and I'll explain. But basically, merge queues, simple merge queues, don't scale. And for the number of commits and engineers that we had, the merge queue would just get progressively backed up over the day. It was sort of like a doctor's office. If you tried to go in at the end of the day, you'd wait a long
Mhm.
time because they've been accumulating more and more backlog as the day went on. And then
Yeah.
sometimes it would get so backed up that it would only clear out and merge your pull request when people stopped committing, say, overnight.
Yep.
So like it would
I
clear out during the night, or occasionally it would not have fully cleared out over the night, and it would take until the next weekend to clear out, which was not good.
my goodness. That's intense. I have been there, though. I have been, at the organization where it was like, "I think I'm going to take the afternoon off and work during the night because that's what the CI pipeline's actually gonna give me a chance to get this merged."
Yep.
So, that
Yep.
was I have been there. Um But yeah, it's super interesting to hear like the 3 different competing solutions. So you kinda got to see a couple different approaches to it. Are there different philosophies that come into this? Are these things you took into account when you made Trunk?
They are things we took into account. I don't know that there are different philosophies, but there are more sophisticated and less sophisticated merging strategies and algorithms.
Okay.
And at Trunk, we kind of support many, and you can configure it via settings and do fancier and fancier stuff as you scale the org. There are some advantages to doing a simpler setup if you're small and you don't need a more complicated setup. But as you
Right.
scale into dozens or hundreds of engineers working in a monorepo, if you want to stay fast, you need some of the more advanced merging strategies, which take a little more integration work. But what you get is a very, very fast merge queue.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, we're about 8 minutes in. I think we're ready to go. Should I
Let's do
share
it.
my screen and,
Yeah, let's do
we'll
it.
get going? Before we do that, let me actually we wanna make sure we pitch this. Let's throw it up on screen. The Monorepo World Conference. So, this is coming up in October. You can get your ticket now. You can book your room now. I believe, Trunk will be there. Yes?
We will be there. We're doing a talk and we're sponsoring. So definitely come and see our talk and see the rest of Monorepo World.
I know. I'm excited. I'm super excited. Um,
Me too.
yeah. The whole ticket thing is always kind of cool too. So we can go check that out. But let's start with this. We have my little event sourced pizza example I have on screen here. Let's actually make sure we don't end up covering like any terminals or anything like that. But this is like a mono repo. It's a good example for us just because it has enough different projects that it should potentially make this interesting. Just because I know Trunk has some interesting integrations with with you know monorepos, this kind of graph, the graph of the projects,
Yep,
potentially how they depend each other. So, and see,
absolutely. Yeah.
it's not super complicated. There are like the larger monorepos I've worked with. We're looking at hundreds of projects. I think we're looking at somewhere in the range of like 15 here. So, so yeah,
So
that's
quick
kind of
premise.
yeah.
We're gonna demo using trunk merge queue with our NX integration with this NX monorepo demo project.
Yes. So how
Cool.
do we I guess the first step is getting it integrated, right?
Yes.
How
Yeah.
do we want to do that? Can you drive me through that?
Yes, absolutely. So we're looking at VS Code. So we have a repo already. The first step is to just go to app.trunk.io, install our GitHub app, which I think you've already done, and enable a merge queue for this repo.
Cool. Let's see where we are with that. Um, so we're here. Do we want to
You're in
onboard now?
that's the wrong tab. Go to merge queue. Cool.
There we
There
go.
you go. Okay, so the way the merge queues work for people who don't know is that it's another layer of testing that merges your code after another layer of testing succeeds. That other layer of testing tests your pull request against the latest main branch that you're merging into, as well as any other pull requests in the queue ahead of you. So make sure that the combinations of pull requests all test successfully before merging. And this stops you from having a broken main branch all the time, which if you run a big monorepo with a lot of commit velocity, happens a lot without a merge queue. So that's why pretty much all big companies that do monorepos like Airbnb, Twitter, Uber, Google, Facebook, whatever, use this strategy for merging.
Cool.
So with trunk merge, create a queue for your main branch and click that. Okay, so the most simple merge strategy with trunk is very simple. All you do is open a pull request. So let's do that next.
Cool. We actually have the little script that I wrote here that's just going to go out and create a pull request for us. So I'm going to
Awesome.
do, would you want just one for now?
Sure, let's just do one for now.
There we go.
Oh, fancy script that makes pull requests for you.
Yes, I think.
Cool.
Let's make sure it worked.
Okay.
There it goes. Okay,
Oh,
so
awesome.
here's our little feature. Oh, look, there's
That,
a comment
right.
here.
Okay. So the trunk bot will comment on your pull request. Now, what what folks actually do is they normally disable the normal merge button, which you can do if you are on a paid plan for GitHub. And instead, folks click the checkbox in our comment. So you can click that. The way this checkbox works is it waits for whatever settings you set to be satisfied before going through, testing the pull request again, and then merging it. The settings to be satisfied are usually like your CI jobs pass and a reviewer has signed off. In this repo, we're not requiring a reviewer, but it will wait for the CI jobs to pass.
Cool. I think we do have like a 2-minute sleep here just to
Oh, okay.
simulate this going a bit longer.
Yeah.
Do we
Just to
want to look at
simulate
it
more
over
of a
here?
real CI job.
Oh,
Sure. There we go.
look at
So
that.
here it showed up in the queue. And if you click that, we can see that it's not mergeable on GitHub yet. And we're just waiting for the CI job.
Gotcha. So the way this is working is we're actually going to wait to make sure this passes all of its own validation against main before it enters into your merge queue. Is that
Yep.
the right way of thinking about it? Okay.
That's exactly right. So if this were a real big monorepo, you would have branched off of some main like yesterday, maybe. and there have been 100 commits since yesterday. So you're not tested against the latest main. When that CI job passes, we get some level of confidence that this pull request works, but it's tested against some old stuff. When it enters the queue, it's guaranteed to test against the absolute latest and will retest. Now, in our case, there's no velocity in this repo, so it's going to retest against main again. But in an actual monorepo with real velocity, it would be testing against a newer commit and also against any other pull requests in the queue.
Very cool.
So actually, why don't we just add some more PRs? Run your script again. We'll queue up a few things.
IDE. How many do we want to add this time?
Let's do 3.
3. Let's see if my script scales.
let's see if we can trigger some like GitHub API rate limit or something.
I know. I'm kind of worried about that, honestly. But
yeah.
See. I think that did it. Let's go to our PRs over here now. So, there's actually 5 in here now. So I would have expected 4, but that is, I guess,
right. Okay. So we have options for this in Trunk, but by default, we open a draft pull request that represents the combination of other pull requests / the latest main that's currently being tested. So that's what this draft pull request is, because we've queued this one pull request into Trunk. So you can see that this will automatically close once it's merged, and it will only ever be in the draft state.
Gotcha.
We don't merge this pull request. We merge your actual pull request.
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
That's
neat.
Exactly.
And then you can kind of see a summary in that pull request of what's going on.
Gotcha.
So now this PR has entered the testing phase of testing against the latest main, and if that passes, then it will get merged.
Cool. So I don't see our other 3 that we just made in the queue now.
That's because they're not in queued yet. So you got to go to those pull requests and click merge on them.
Gotcha.
One of the cool things about a merge queue is that when you think as the author, this pull request is done, it's ready, you can go and click the merge button, even if CI hasn't finished, even if reviewers haven't approved it. And when they have, and when it has finished and passed, it just enters the queue, gets tested again, make sure everything works, and merges. You don't have to come back to it multiple times. The workflow is nicer.
Gotcha. That's cool. So what happens, let's say one of these PRs fails its own validation. What happens? Yeah. Does it get booted out of the queue at that point?
It doesn't get booted out of the queue, but go back to the Trunk web app.
Sure.
Cool. So see those 3 are currently in the not ready state. Basically, it will just stay in the not ready state until its own validation passes. Then it will move into the testing state. Now, if it fails in the testing state, which is like we're trying to currently do one last test before merging this pull request, then it does get booted out of the queue. We comment on the pull request that happened. You can also set up Slack alerts so you can get slacked about it as the author of the pull request. Or you can set up a Slack alert channel and get slacked about it for the whole org.
Neat.
Yes.
I like that.
One cool thing, just a quick explanation on how pretty much all merge queues work, is that when you have multiple things testing at the same time, if one of them fails, the ones behind it are testing based on it. So the ones behind it then have to restart testing. There are a bunch of strategies to make this not hurt so bad. It's basically a pipeline stall. So the more pull requests that fail on the merge queue, the slower a merge queue gets. We support a bunch of strategies to make that less painful. One of them is a setting that you can turn on within Trunk that allows you to ignore previous failures if a later success happened. So if pull request 3 is based on 2 and 1 and 3 passes with the combination of 1, 2, and 3, just merge all 3. So that's one thing that we support that mitigates things like flaky tests. If you had a flaky test that caused an earlier one to fail, that's a really common pain point of scaling a monorepo, is and scaling a merge queue is flaky tests screwing over your merge queue.
Right.
So that setting really helps out with that. The other thing we support is batching. So you can test these as a batch, which can eliminate or mitigate pipeline stalls. If a batch fails, then we break apart the batch and start retesting the individual ones to figure out what was broken.
Gotcha. That kind of makes sense. The
Yeah.
other thing that I would foresee from uh, just from having this kind of approach is what happens when you have like merge conflicts. How do you
Yeah.
handle that? That
Yeah.
seems like the big one, right?
Yeah. So we detect it even before you have a merge conflict with main. If you have a merge conflict with another pull request that's currently
Hmm.
queued, we detect it, comment on your pull request that this is a thing, and then you have to go fix it. It lets you find out about those sooner, basically.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually, I feel like it's this weird race to see who's going to get in first.
It can
when
be.
And you
It
don't
can be.
actually even know who you're racing against most of the time, because like you said, you don't really know until one of them gets into main, and then you kind of have to whoever drew the short stick has to kind of figure out how they're going to resolve themselves to the other one. So
Totally.
that's interesting. So after alerting people that it happened, what do you do with those PRs though? Do they enter into the queue? Does one enter into the queue? Do you
The
have
one
some
that had the
policy?
merge conflict, so the person who was second,
Okay.
basically, with the conflicting code, will get kicked out of the queue, and they're going to have to whatever the git merge conflict, a merge conflict at that level was, they're going to have to go and change their code to make it work. And then
Interesting.
there are other kinds of logical merge conflicts that are just like you change the functionality of a function. I depended on the old functionality of that function. Now I have failing tests. Um,
Mhm.
that has a very similar situation with a merge queue. We kick out the failing entry in the merge queue, tell the author they have to go fix it.
Yeah. Well, so for the user that gets kicked out of the queue, what does their workflow look like? Do they kind of have to wait for this merge queue to go through so that it can get merged into main? Because I don't see how they would go about resolving that conflict, for example. Like just say it's a simple git merge conflict.
Mm-hmm.
How would you go about resolving that unless this was in main? Does that make sense?
Usually, yeah, it does make sense. So usually the easiest thing to do is to wait for the one ahead of you to merge to main and then resolve it and then queue again.
Okay. Yeah.
There are other options because we make branches in your repo that are the combination of you and all of your PRs in front of you. You could rebase on one of those or on the one that correlates to your merge queue entry, and that would allow you to fix it earlier. But by and large, people just wait for it to land on main and then fix it.
Cool. Oh, something happened with the queue. That was
All right.
interesting.
Okay, so because we did all those at the same time, they all
Mhm.
finished at the same time and merged. And then we
Nice.
collapsed. We only show a couple of merged ones, and then this screen is mostly to show
Oh,
the
I
in
see.
progress stuff. So we collapsed a couple of them. There we go. So
Very cool.
the whole lot of them merged. I did want to show off a
It's all cleaned
couple of
up.
things.
That's
It's
cool.
all cleaned up. And it's a super nice workflow, and it guarantees that your main branch is clean, uh, gives you kind of this nicer flow of just author, click the button when you're ready, and you can be satisfied that it gets retested and that everything definitely works. You're not breaking the main branch for everyone else. You don't get yelled at by anyone. It's great.
Very cool.
Now, what we just did, and this technique works fine if you have 10 or 20 or maybe 30 engineers. But if you have slower CI or a lot of people committing, so think 100 plus commits a day, you really want something more strategic. And we support that. We support that with an NX integration. We actually have an NX merge action, which you can integrate into CI. And what it does is it sends the trunk backend which projects you touched according to NX. And we, instead of forming a simple queue like we're looking at here, we form basically a graph with edges between pull requests depending on how their dependencies overlap. And we only test pull requests against other pull requests that they could have affected. And this effectively allows people working in different projects to have totally different lanes of a merge queue into their repo. So why don't we move to set that up next?
Yes. How do we do that?
So the first step is to go into our CI job and integrate the trunk NX action.
Cool.
So here we're using GitHub Actions, and we're just going to add another job. Now in trunk land, the vernacular is uploading impacted targets, but it's basically the projects that you've touched in NX.
Cool. So pretty much what we want to do is there's the main job. This is the one that's going to run our validation, essentially.
Yep.
Is there like a place where I can copy and paste the code?
Why, there is.
Here?
So in the trunk NX repo, there's a snippet to grab specifically for GitHub Actions.
Oh, neat. I think do I have that link? Is that link in the documentation somewhere?
It is, but let me grab it for you.
Cool. See if I can find it.
I can also put it in. Actually, I can't put it in StreamYard.
Is this what we're looking for?
Yes, that's the stuff.
That's the stuff. Cool. Let me go grab this. Drop this in here.
Grab that. It does require one other argument, which is other than the copy and paste there, which is workspace path. And I think for you, the workspace path is at the root.
Workspace. Is it camel case?
No, it's workspace dash path, all underscore, all lowercase.
I think they call that snake case. Yeah.
I think that's with underscores instead of dashes.
Oh yeah, this is like kebab case, I think.
I don't know.
They have names.
I know they have names. Anyway,
this is screaming snake case, I believe.
Yeah.
But yeah, cool. So this is what we need.
This is what we need. And
cool.
I believe you already have trunk API token in your settings for GitHub.
I believe so. Yes, we set that up as a secret yesterday, so that's already set up. But if not, I imagine it's really easy to get this token, right?
It's really easy. It's just in the settings. You just go grab it in the settings of trunk.
Gotcha. There you go. So there it is, right there.
Yep.
I'm not going to show everyone my token because I'm weird about that.
Don't show off your secret token.
Exactly.
It's not like an OpenAI token. You can't really charge money to people, but it's still a token that you don't want people to have.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we've integrated that. Let's go ahead and open a pull request with that and merge it.
Okay. So we want to save the new changes to the CI. So we'll do git add adding impacted projects to trunk, I guess.
Yep. Sounds great.
Trunk CI action, I guess. Then
I think you need an and after that checkout.
Oh yeah. Let me finish this and then we'll get there. You're right. Chain it all together. Something didn't like it.
This is what we get when we chain 14 commands together.
I know.
I think it all worked except the push failed.
Yeah. Truck. That's
typos.
Curse my typing. I've been working on it, I promise. Yeah. We got Rarish is here. Hi Rarish. Thanks. It's good to be back streaming. y'all can see how bad I type again. And Column's here from the NX team. Hey, Column.
Fantastic.
So cool. That's pushed up. Let's go ahead and wait until the CI passes so we can merge that in.
Cool. Why don't you just admin merge this? Actually, we'll do it. We'll do it.
How does one do that?
So you click the red checkbox and click merge. Yeah. The benefits of being admin of this repo.
This feels wrong.
So wrong.
It feels naughty in some way.
Don't bypass the merge queue. So actually, just to call this out, we do have priorities for the merge queue as well. So let's say you wanted to get something in really quick, but you don't want to give everyone in your repo or all 100 devs or whatever admin access to just admin merge stuff. We have priorities that let you basically skip the queue. You can. So we have 4 different priorities: high, medium, low, and urgent. And urgent just goes straight to the front of the queue, retests and merges. High goes to the back of the list of things testing and will be the next one tested and then merged. And then medium is what it normally is, and low basically gets starved until everything else is empty.
Gotcha. So it sounds like I need to get urgent access is what it sounds like.
Yes, we could have queued that urgently as well.
Cool. All right. Well, that's merged in now. So now our action is in place. Should we spawn some more?
Before we spawn more PRs, let's go into the trunk web app settings.
Okay.
And we're going to switch this thing. So we basically have 2 modes, single mode and parallel mode. Okay. And you can see right there on the screen. So let's switch to parallel mode. Now that we're sending ourselves these impacted targets, and the message says we require impacted targets for this to work, then we'll be able to see that the relationship between these pull requests and test them appropriately. Okay, so now let's spawn a bunch of pull requests.
How many?
Oh,
test.
How many do you think will push the rate limit in? Let's do.
I'm ready to live dangerously. Okay.
Is this going to give us an error if one of these fails?
Yeah. The error handling isn't great, but it will say like failed to push PR number, whatever.
Got it.
It's chugging along like a champ so far, though.
Oh no! It's keeping going.
Still going. I haven't seen the error yet. All right, we did it.
I like that it's 0 indexed. You're a proper programmer.
Thanks.
All right.
That's like a Python thing, right? Python's not actually 0 indexed, right? Or
what?
0 base. Is that right?
No.
It's not?
Yeah, it's not right.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I don't know what y'all do over there in Python world, but it's
okay.
Weird.
Let's
yeah. I'm just sorry. I'm trying. I imagine what we want to do is click the check on all of these. Yeah.
You're exactly right. Let's.
All right. Let me. You talk while I do that.
Okay. Well, there's not too much to say, but the idea here is to enqueue them all. That's it. So let's just click merge on everybody, and then go over to the trunk web app when we're done with that and see what's going on.
I'm wondering if my little script is actually messed up. It seems to be like chaining all the different commits on top of each other.
Yeah, I see that. That probably will make them all dependent on each other, and our fancy merge graph dependency might just look like a line because they're all dependent on each other. But let's see. Let's see what happens.
We'll see. Yeah, it should be because yeah, I should have had this just check out main in between each one. I didn't think to do that, but
yeah.
Maybe we can try again if that don't work. We'll see.
Right. Okay, well, let's go to the web app, go back to trunk.
Cool. We're back in trunk. Let's go back to trunk. Oh, this is different.
This is our code quality thing. Go to merge
Oh, I
queue,
see.
the other tab. Cool. And basically okay, now they're showing as not ready because they haven't passed their own checks yet. But once they are ready, then we'll see something different. So let's give them 2 or 3 minutes for that to happen.
Cool. Should we still be looking at the queue view now, or is this where we should start looking at graph?
So we should start looking at graph once they have uploaded their impacted targets. We can't form a graph until that job that we just added completes,
Gotcha.
which probably will take a couple minutes and then be done.
Yeah.
While we wait for that, I will plug that Trunk also has a tool called Trunk Code Quality, and we're coming out with a flaky test detection and mitigation tool. So if you're interested in those, hit us up. Trunk Code Quality is free for open source. Everything we do is free for open source. And Trunk Code Quality in particular was recently adopted by ESLint to lint the ESLint repo. So it's worth a look.
It's linting itself using you. That's cool.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
That's very cool.
We're really stoked about that.
So, what's your solution to flaky tests?
So our solution uses a lot of fancy magic to detect the flaky tests.
Okay.
Based on annotating everywhere you run your tests to send the output from those tests to us. We process it and we detect what's flaky, what's not flaky. We alert you about it, but also we have quarantining. So you can turn on a setting that quarantines any flaky tests that we detect such that they don't impact you anymore. We have ticketing integration, so you can create a ticket that corresponds to this flaky test, assign it to the right owner. We have an ownership integration as well, so you can figure out who the right owner of this test is, assign it to them, get them to fix it. And really importantly, we track some impact stats for flaky tests. So not all tests are run the same amount of time. Sometimes some test runs on every pull request, and if it's flaky, it's really going to impact a lot of people's velocity. We have a pretty cool calculator on trunk.io/flaky-tests, which shows you how impactful these things can be.
Trunk.io/flaky-tests.
Yes. Cool. If you scroll down a bit.
That's neat.
Yeah. That's what our dashboard looks like. And you can kind of see how much time your organization is losing due to flaky tests, depending on what your flaky test rate is.
What is this? Engineers lost?
Yeah.
What is this?
So
are you talking about engineer time lost, or are we talking about something else?
We're talking about engineer time lost, but
okay.
Flaky tests are literally killing your engineers.
Oh my gosh.
So
that's what it seems like.
It's not wrong.
Okay.
You put in 1,000 engineers. So basically, if you have a 1% flaky test rate and your CI takes 90 minutes and you have 1,000 engineers, you're losing 15% of your organization due to flaky tests.
Yeah.
Which is a huge amount of velocity. Now, your organization probably doesn't have these stats, but you can go and do it. The assumptions that we're making here are that you're running, I believe, 250 tests per pull request, and that each flaky test failure requires you to go and click restart at least, and you probably also go and burn some time investigating it before deciding to do that. There are some studies that say for this kind of context switch for software engineers, it takes 23 minutes of productivity out of your day. So the name of the game for good developer experience is less context switching, and that's where this time number is coming from.
Very cool.
Let's hop back to the Merge web app.
Yeah, how are we doing here?
I'm sure that we're there. So these are all testing. So quickly hop over to the graph view. Okay, so actually what happened is they all seem to touch different things, and they're not dependent on each other at all, is apparently what that script did. So instead of testing against each other, they are all just testing independently because they don't depend on each other.
That's interesting.
And that makes for a very fast merge queue because they're basically all separate.
Yeah.
Although we did intend with this script to uh, have some dependencies between them. But basically, you guys can envision, you've seen graphs before. You can envision that if these had touched interdependent projects, that they would form a graph.
Yeah.
And
What's
we can see,
happening here? Are we seeing some go away as they get merged in?
yeah, so yellow is currently testing, and when they're done testing and they succeed, they just get merged into main. So
Okay. Do you have
they
like a
go.
pool of how many you'll test at a time? I think I saw that in the settings,
There is
set to 5.
indeed, by default, it's 5. You can
Okay.
set it to whatever you want. Um, and a lot of times for companies, this is dependent on like um, basically how much they want to spend on CI.
Okay. Yes, because I guess these will all be going. I guess it's a matter of how much you're willing to pay for saved wall time at the end of the
Yeah,
day, right? Because you're
yeah.
going to
So
end up. You could do a lot of compute here if you wanted to,
you can
especially
do as
for
much. Yeah, if
yeah
you have
for
hundreds of
those.
engineers, you could. So you're exactly right. It's like a bandwidth versus latency trade-off.
Yeah, well, I mean that's something we look at a lot with NX Cloud too, so that's why I'm familiar with it for sure.
Cool.
But
Yeah.
yeah, this is cool. This is like it's very interesting because it's attacking CI on like a different dimension than what I normally think of it as. Because I normally think of it in terms of let's focus in on the one PR. How do we make that one PR go faster? And we're
Yeah.
thinking about like the different tasks inside of the validation, how to order that better, how to parallelize that, how can we do that in a way that really speeds that up.
Yeah.
Versus this is like, well, it feels like you're ignoring that problem we're focusing on. Well, not ignoring it, but you're
Hmm.
just looking at a different dimension of it, which is, well, actually, in reality, large velocity repos are going to have 20 of these at the same time. How do we do that as best we can?
Yeah.
So, and that
Yeah.
I, the problem actually gets more interesting there. It's kind of like the birthday problem, right? Because you got to look
Hmm.
at how the different ones interact. So if you have 20 in the queue, if you want to do that as fast as possible, you actually want to do one of every combination, which can get really
Right.
expensive real quick, I imagine. So,
Right. It can. Right. There's a bit of an n squared issue going on there if you do every combination, which is why we have controls to not do every combination.
right.
Um, but if you wanted to maximally spend money, you would jack up the amount of parallel tests that we support to whatever number you want, 1,000.
Yeah. Very cool.
Um, yeah, absolutely. And then I was going to mention something else about merge queues, but it's okay. This will just sort of work itself through the pool as these things test and get completed. The reason we're seeing two, kind of like originally we saw 5 of them merge and then the 5 went away and now we're seeing these other 5 in testing in this view, is because the parallelism is set to 5 by default.
Gotcha.
So it tested the first 5, they finished, tested the second 5, they will finish whenever CI finishes.
So those first 5 are merged in, and we're good to go on
Yeah,
those,
yeah, and if you
essentially.
go back to the queue tab,
Mhm.
so we still even when you have these dependencies, we still have a view of it that's a queue, even though it actually isn't a total queue. But you can see the purple ones are the merged ones at the top.
Right.
Um,
I'm still intrigued by the graph. I'm a little in interested at why none of them depended on each other. Um,
I
that's
don't know.
interesting.
Do they touch the same projects?
So the way that I have my script go for every commit we do or every PR we make, it's going to touch one project randomly out of like
Okay.
the however that many there were inside of my repo. So it
Mhm.
should have been like we saw the graph at the very beginning of this. I think I still have it up for here. So it's just going to hit one of these nodes randomly, and like if it hits something at the bottom here, like for example, if it hit events, it should have affected all of these other ones that are in blue right now.
That's true. That's true.
So
Yeah. So if that's actually what happened, then I would concur. What, you want to open one of those PRs and see what actually got touched?
Sure. Let's take a look. We'll take a look at the last one, number 9.
Sure. If
And
you will.
now it's and like I said, ideally my script would have just like checked out main and then cut its new thing, but instead it's
Yeah.
kind of like building on the one before it. I wonder if that's why we see the disjointedness in there. But
Yeah, maybe. If you go
can
to
we
file
see
change.
actually in the actions for this? Is that going to be output by the impacted targets? Like, could we see that in the output
Yeah,
for
I
them?
believe it will be. If you
Um,
at the bottom, if you there's like a thing that you can expand, or you can do
impacted
it that way.
targets. Is this what we're looking for?
Yeah, compute impacted targets is the right one. It's cool. 0 impacted targets. So it thinks with NX graph dash dash affected that you didn't affect anything.
Uh-oh.
Uh-huh.
I wonder why that is. So the way I did this is I added a JavaScript file into the source directory of one of these projects, which I assumed would have flagged it as having actually affected something.
Hmm.
Don't know.
I don't know off the top of my head, but this is dependent on NX giving us what projects were impacted. So there might be, for folks who are looking to integrate this into your NX monorepos, there might be a little bit of integration to make sure that that's happening properly.
Yeah. Let's see. This is the one we want. Let me take a look at just the affected command here. You can check out that branch. Uh, Yeah, according to our tools, at least, looks like all of them are affected from this, between this and
Hmm.
head. So that's that's interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, you can check out the exact command that we're running as well. But we'll loop
Yeah,
back on that. We'll loop
yeah,
back on that post live stream.
cool.
We'll make sure that that works smooth.
Yeah, but yeah,
Cool.
the idea behind it is definitely super interesting. Just the idea that you are taking into uh, taking the NX data into effect when you're kind of building the different queues for this, or the different parallel queues. What is the
Yeah.
algorithm you actually go for? Like assuming like the affected broke out, right?
So
Like, are you looking
basically,
to group similar ones that affect
yeah.
similar? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, we're looking at the set intersection between the impacted projects of any two PRs. Then, if there is an intersection, we basically make an edge between those two nodes. If the PRs were different nodes in this graph,
Mhm.
is the way to think about it. And that forms the edges, and the edges determine which PRs get based on other PRs, and then the combination of them tested before they can merge. So
Gotcha.
that's how it works. So if PR1 impacts projects A and B, and PR2 impacts B and C, then there's an intersection between the two of them. We form an edge between PR1 and PR2.
Gotcha. Very interesting.
Cool. So that's trunk merge queue. And if you're running a big monorepo, a big NX monorepo, and are interested in getting a merge queue going, this is kind of the only act in town that has this support to actually know about the interdependencies of your pull requests and make it fast.
Yeah. That's really cool. Do you have any case studies by any chance of like how much time
We
this has
do.
saved folks?
Yeah, we do. We have it
Does it
for
show it? Does it measure it in terms of engineers' lives?
no engineers were harmed in the making of this stat.
The making of this merge queue. Nice. In fact, you're saving lives, right?
We're
That
okay. So
you need to switch this. Like, this is a very negative graphic, I feel like, David. If you just do
oh,
it in terms of like engineers saved per month,
okay.
that would be
I'm
I would
open
like
to it.
that much more. And maybe
I'm
like take
open
it
to
off
it.
of this reddish, red and black theme to like something
The orangey red is
happy.
too, too
It's too much.
it speaks to the blood of the toil of the engineers who have had to click restart on every
I
flaky
mean, I
test.
feel like that is what you're going for
Basically,
for sure.
yeah. Okay,
But
so
yeah,
we're joking about it, but honestly, at Uber, I was saying that our developer experience was poor.
yeah.
People did absolutely, and I've seen this everywhere I've worked. People did absolutely leave because it was a pain in the ass to work there.
Mhm.
And
I believe it. Yeah,
usually it
100%.
winds up being high performers in your org that are just super frustrated that they want to go work somewhere easy and scrappy because they perceive, basically it boils down to, they perceive the developer experience will be better, they'll be able to have more impact, work on more projects, have better ownership of them where they're not dealing with giant systems that are very slow to work in. But it boils down to, like, what's the developer experience of working here? And if it's really slow, people ditch. If you have a zillion flaky tests and a lot of your day is context switching back and forth and losing velocity because your brain is just context switching all the time, clicking restart on jobs that are spuriously failing, that's like not that fun of a job.
Mhm. Yeah, can see that.
Yeah. So our goal is basically, at Trunk in general, our goal is to basically just smooth over the pain points of engineering in big orgs
Mhm.
and make it more equivalent to the smoothness of if you were just working on a small project with a few other people, but still have all the stuff that big orgs need and want to be able to successfully roll out a big monorepo.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay.
Uh, well, cool. That's merge queue. It seems like the perfect pairing to go with a lot of the stuff that we do.
I
So,
think so. Yeah.
it's a good alliance we're forming here, I feel like.
Absolutely is. Yeah. No, I think there's really good synergy between NX and what we're making, and that we can actually lean on NX to empower some of our tools.
Yeah. Well, glad that our tool is enabling this kind of, exploration and enhancements in sort of your dimension too. So that's very cool. Do you plan to use NX stuff? Like you're using some of our stuff inside of your merge queue.
Yep.
What about for your code quality and CI analytics products?
Um, the only intersection with NX where we actually directly integrate is for the merge queue right now, but
Okay,
who knows? There could be more. There could be more in the future.
very cool. We didn't talk about CI analytics that much or slash at all. Is this worth talking about as well?
Um, well, I think we're going to run out of time before we could talk about it. So CI Analytics is in a public beta, and Flaky Tests, which you don't see as a tab right now, is in a private beta.
Okay.
Um, Flaky Tests is the hot new thing though, and we are, if your organization is relatively large and struggling with Flaky Tests, onboarding new orgs into our Flaky Test private beta. So if you go to trunk.io/flaky tests/flaky dash tests, there's a sign up to join the waitlist for that. And if you're appropriate, we would love to have you.
Yeah, just think of all the engineers you can save.
Oh my
Uh,
God. You're
I'm
really
not
saving
gonna let that
lives by
go.
signing up for this project.
I'm not gonna let that go,
Save
dude.
save a life. Sign up for trunk.io/flaky dash tests.
Exactly. Well, yeah, I guess for us on the NX Cloud product we're building, we're offering we have our own offering for flaky tests. At the moment, it's very I don't want to say naive, but it's very just it's very straightforward. We're going to we have the information because we are at the end of the day essentially a task runner, and we're going to look at like at the hash of your source. So we'll be able to identify pretty obviously, hey, this task is flaky because you've run this exact code before. Last time it worked, this time it didn't. So something's going on here. We actually have that's in NX Cloud, so our CI platform. It's also just in our task runner itself now too. In the more later versions of NX, we're going to give you a warning just so that you can get that warning very early on in the development cycle. And I think there's some interesting things we could definitely do here, just being like more of a CI platform, how we could monitor that, maybe flag things as flaky tasks, and then maybe show, hey, this is where we started noticing the flaky tasks is on this commit. I think that would be a super helpful tool as well. But yeah, definitely a lot of interesting things there. It seems like we're focusing on the same pain points. So very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. People experience the same pain points. So I'm glad to see an ecosystem of you guys and us and whoever else actually building tools to fix this stuff so companies can stop rebuilding hacky solutions internally and get some nicely done solutions from companies like us who are building it as a real product.
Yeah. I mean, the general theme of my time with NX, especially since moving into more of the DevRel situation, is I don't think people care about us all that much, which is fine. Like they shouldn't. They should actually just care about building their thing. Like you said at Uber, the important thing should have been for everyone to be focused on how do we get this car to drive better. They shouldn't have been worried about merge keys. They shouldn't have been worried about modern repo difficulties. They should have been worried about how to set up linting inside of their repo or any of that stuff. So if we can give cooperatively a solution where people can focus in on shipping what they want to ship, I think that's where we should be. I think that's where we're all headed. So it's cool.
Yeah,
but yeah,
100%. All companies focus on whatever your product is, and if it's not your product, buy it.
Yeah, exactly. David, thanks so much for joining us for our NX Live today. This was great. It was really cool to see the merge queue in action. Really cool to see we merged like 20 PRs here in the space of less than an hour. So thanks to Trunk. So
fantastic.
Awesome.
It was great talking to you, and hopefully the audience here got something out of it. If you're looking for a merge queue, you know where to look.
Yeah, and yeah, we'll see you at Mono Repo World. Plug that one last time.
Absolutely.
So cool.
See you then. Thanks, Zack.
You got it. See y'all, everyone.